nobody on this road that can save your soul. Almost lost control now. Tell me what you need in a friend, and now pray that we endure to the end again. I'm just saying that I'm here for you. When the world turn against you, I'ma be with you. Got my sword in my hand, you can count on me. I won't run and hide, fight mightily.
Waiting on your O.F.I. See the Jacob, I'm the apple of my father's eye. I learned the truth for who I was, and it made me cry. If I don't keep the laws of Yah, then I'm gonna die. Living curses, but I'm edifying in my verses. Prepare the hearses for the heathens who be steady lurking.
All praise to the Most High God, Yahweh. We do so by Shema Mashiach, Bomalak Yahweh Shai, to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. Greetings. Listen, it's going down tonight, right? You know, there's been a lot of talk going on in terms of kingdom rulership. Now, look, the reason why this is so important is because maybe you don't know, as an Israelite, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans of indigenous descent, specifically in the Western Hemisphere, maybe you don't know that you're an Israelite. Maybe you're just new into this truth. You're just finding out, right? Maybe you don't understand the promises that the Most High God has given, has promised, has commanded, has set in motion for his chosen people. Maybe you don't know that. Maybe you just come into this knowledge. Maybe you come from traditional Orthodox religion, man-made religion, Christianity, so forth and so on. And maybe now you're wondering, like, what is all this talk about the 12 tribes of Israel? You know, does it matter? I thought God came for everybody. I thought God sent his son for everybody. Every nation will be in the kingdom of heaven for a while. And I say a while because we see that it says the nation of Esau, there will come a time where there's no more remaining of the house of Esau. We see that in Obadiah, right? Shalom, shalom. So from that perspective, shalom, sister Kala Yahbashim Abshai. From that perspective, we're bringing out shalom, Kala Yahbashim Abshai. We're bringing out a lesson tonight that's talking about kingdom rulership, and we're going to bring out a couple of key precepts to substantiate, based on the Bible, that the rulership in the kingdom is only for the children of Israel. Now, that does not mean that there will not be other nations there. Who you think is going to build up the kingdom? It's not going to be the children of Israel. It's going to be the other nations, right? So why this is so important is that in order for you to be a part of the kingdom rulership, the focus is keeping the commandments, having faith in Yahweh Shai, and doing all of the mighty works that you can do by repenting. All right. That is the focus. You know, if you think like, okay, you're going to make the kingdom without doing the work, that's not going to happen. The Most High God, and it's not because the Most High God cannot make that happen. He can do whatever he wants to do. But because he can do whatever he wants to do, he's told you of what the requirements are for you to do for you to make the kingdom of heaven. All right. That's not taking any power from the Most High. That's not taking anything from what's prescribed in the word. That's not diminishing from the word or adding unto the word. It's taking everything in full context and realizing that the Most High God, Yahweh, has already commanded and given us the blueprint of what are the requirements that he requires for you to make the kingdom. Now, why this is so important for the children of Israel is that this will enable you and empower you, Lord willing, to encourage you to do the things that you need to do to be a part of that number, right? To do all you can do to make your calling and your election sure. Shalom, shalom, call out Yahabashim Yahushai. So, peep game, right? We're going to jump right into it. The coming kingdom, 12 gates, 12 tribes, all right? So, when you look at mainstream Christianity, when you look at the gospel, which when we go into the gospel, I want to get this really quick. When we go to Isaiah, right, I want to get something really quick. the gospel, all right? Because a lot of people say, okay, what is the gospel? Where do you find the gospel, right? So when you go into Isaiah, the 61st chapter, and when we look into, this is what we call the gospel. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings. This good tidings right here is what is known as the gospel. The book of the prophet Isaiah, or Isaiah, which is Isaiah in the Greek. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. Now, we understand that when we go back to Isaiah, right here it says, he hath anointed me to preach good tidings. These good tidings, when you go into Luke, it doesn't say good tidings, it says to preach the gospel. So we know that the gospel is synonymous with good tidings. And we know Isaiah was an Israelite prophet sent only to the children of Israel. So we know in context that the gospel was sent for the children of Israel so that they could be freed from the captivity of sin. All right. That is chiefly what the children of Israel have been bound by. Remember, we only went into captivity because of our iniquity. So we actually were bound by iniquity, which as a byproduct of us being bound by the iniquity made us be bound by the nations that the Most High God sent against us because of the iniquity that we were in. All right. I hope everybody realizes that from that perspective. All right. So when we think about back to the point of what the gospel is and tying it back to the kingdom, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn. Now, all that mourn in the whole world? No. To appoint unto them that mourn in Zion. Zion, the gospel is for to proclaim liberty into the day of judgment and of reckoning by the Most High for them who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, them that mourn in Zion, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they, being those that mourn in Zion, might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of Yahweh, that he might be glorified. So when we go into this Zion, right, it goes to a mountain in Jerusalem, also a name for Jerusalem. And we know it's the location of Zion. Who dwells in Zion are the children of Israel. So in proper context, Christ in Luke 4 is quoting Isaiah 61, which contextually is talking about the children of Israel, who are also synonymous with Zion, right, to bring captivity from them. And why Christ is quoting this is because Christ is that mediator, and he is that conduit unto which salvation can come for the children of Israel who mourn in Zion, who are in captivity of sin, because through Christ's death, burial, and resurrection, and the sacrifice of his blood of being that sacrificial lamb, he brought repentance to those who mourn in Zion to reconcile them back into the fold. Why he said, I have sheep who are not of this fold, for all 12 tribes to be gathered and reconciled through the reconciliation of Christ's ministry back to repentance, to be able to be a part of the kingdom if we're in that number. I know that was a lot, but that was a foundation that definitely, shalom, King Kala Yahbashim Yahshai, a foundation that definitely was needed and was very important. All right. So when we get back to it, mainstream gospel ends in a vague heaven is for everyone. There's a context to that. Yes, all nations, all 18 nations, right? If we subscribe to the table of nations, will be in the kingdom for a time, but there will be a rulership, a ruling class that is above all nations, which are the children of Israel. So you have Christ, you have the 144,000, you have the 12 apostles, right? You have the children of Israel, all 12 tribes who are part of that ruling nation. And then you have all of the other nations, so who are going to be subservient to the children of Israel. Now, I think contextually, what happens is that a lot of the nations think, okay, well, we did the children of Israel so bad. When they hear slaves or subservient classes, they think about what the other nations, chiefly the Edomites, the so-called Caucasian race, has done to everybody else that they've conquered through rape, robbery, pillaging, some very horrific things, from hanging people on trees to having picnics where you literally castrate so-called Blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, where you scalp the Native Americans and stole their land, where you raped and unalived, right, a lot of various nations. And so they think that that's what we mean as the children of Israel. But I tell you this, never will you see us pushing a doctrine of harming anybody, of unaliving anybody, of, graping, remove the G, anybody, of selling people's children for sex, fornication toys, and feeding babies to alligators. Never will you hear an Israelite pushing those doctrines, because they classify us as a letter 8 group when we're not, because we're pushing loving our people and we push the Bible. So that's why contextually, historically, because of the Caucasian race and a lot of these other nations have perpetuated very horrific acts under their rulership and their government, they fear that being reciprocated upon them when vengeance is the Lord's. All right. So when we talk about kingdom rulership, let's talk about biblically. All right. So there's literally a city with a literal wall, New Jerusalem, 12 gates and 12 names, in a clear order between Israel and the rest of the nations. And the end of Revelation confirms what that beginning will look like in this new kingdom. That's why it says Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of the world that follows, right? Let's get that in second Esdras, right? And this is why, too, a lot of people in second Esdras 6, they don't subscribe to the Apocrypha because of, they don't think it's canon. But even if they accept it as history, I mean, that still cuts it, right? But we know it's canon because it was contained in the original translation of even the King James Bible and other Bibles that predated that, right? So for Esau, second Esdras 6 and 9, for Esau is the end of the world. We now see Esau's rulership, the Caucasian rulership, right? You got Trump in office, you got all of these rulerships. But we know that when Christ comes back to reign, who is a black man, so-called black man, as a reminder, who's an Israelite, more importantly, right? When Christ sets up his kingdom on earth, we know that there's not going to be any other nations. You're not going to have Christ ruling and America ruling, Russia ruling, the UK ruling. There's not going to be all of these nations with their own sovereignty. Christ's kingdom is going to be not subservient to these other kingdoms, or not in subjection to these other kingdoms, but it's going to be the chief kingdom, and every other kingdom will fall. There will be no more ruling nations. And that's the Bible teaching, right? So it is, you got people who, hey, they fight for the U.S. military, have at it. You got people who fight for the Ukrainian military, have at it. Fight for NATO, have at it. All of these different troops, you're going to have to admit that during the battle of Armageddon and in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, that you're going to have, all these troops are going to have to fight against Christ. And that's crazy to think about. How are you a Christian and want to fight against Christ? You can't serve two masters. And this is what Christ is teaching you. Love one and hate the other one. or you'll draw nigh unto one and push the other one away, because you cannot serve the kingdoms of the world and serve the kingdom of God. They're diametrically opposed. They're in contrary to each other. So when it says for Esau is the end of the world, that's what we see right now with the ending, the winding up of the world government. And Jacob is the beginning of it that follows, because Jacob represents Zion, the children of Israel, and the rulership of the Israelites, which is under the head of Christ. All right. I mean, that's playing upon tables. That's definitely playing upon tables. All praise Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Now, peep game. Let's get back into it. So when you think about 12 gates for 12 tribes, there is no Gentile gate. Think about this. We know that Israel, Jerusalem, if you picture Jerusalem being the capital of the kingdom, right? The kingdom is going to spread across the whole earth. Make no doubt about it. All right. Every single portion of planet Earth will be under the rulership of Christ. All right. Yahweh Shai in the Hebrew. Okay. Which means he saves. Every kingdom will be subjected to the rulership of Christ across the whole earth. But there will be a capital of the kingdom, right? The Nile to the Euphrates is the land promised to the children of Israel. We always talk about just Israel, but it's actually from the Nile to the Euphrates. The land of Canaan is the promised land. Israel is contained in that, right? And inside of Israel, you have the capital, which will be Jerusalem, all right, which is the ruling capital. So when we talk about rulership, there's 12 gates. There's no Gentile gate. There's no gate for the other nations. Now, the other nations will bring the forces to the gates, right? And we also see that the other nations will build up the kingdom. We see that in Isaiah, the 14th chapter, which we're not going to get into that today. We're going to cover these key chapters. So Revelations 21 and 12. And had a wall great and high. This is a physical wall, great and high, and had 12 gates, physical 12 gates. And at the gate, 12 angels, right? And those angels are going to be, from my understanding in the biblical context, they're going to be like the equivalent of a bouncer, all right? And the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So there's 12 tribes, 12 gates with 12 names of the children of Israel. That's playing upon table. And the city, and this is Revelations 21 and 23 through 24, same chapter. And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it. The glory of God, the laws, the statutes, the commandments, the righteousness, right? And the Lamb is the light thereof. That is Christ, is the Lamb. And the nations of them which are saved. So this shows you there's going to be nations that are saved. So there are going to be other nations in the kingdom. They just won't be in rulership. They will be the subservient, the second-class citizens, right? Just how right now, and this is not a crazy concept, y'all. Right now in America, like there's literally something called minorities. We're second-class citizens. We're still labeled 3/5 of a human according to the Constitution. So this is not like a crazy, unthinkable thing that human beings have not experienced right now on earth, all right? And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it. And the kings of the earth do bring their glory to and honor into it. So this is meaning they're bringing their glory and their honor, which are their riches, their wealth, and things of that nature, as tributaries, as tributes. All right. If we get this word and if we show right here, let me get this real quick. Tribute. So tribute. Tribute is an action, statement, or a gift that shows respect, gratitude, or admiration, or historically a payment made by one nation to a stronger power as a sign of submission. So the Most High God, through Yahweh Shai and the angels and the children of Israel, are going to beat the other nations into submission, where they're not even going to war anymore. Why do you think in the prophecy it says, let 1 second, into pruning hooks. So when you get into the prophecies in Joel, right? I want to get this in the KJV. This is why it says in the book of Joel, chapter 3 and verse 10, I'm going to read up for context, right? Start with verse 7. Behold, I will raise them out of the place where ye have sowed them, and will return their recompense upon your own head, right? So this, if we talk about the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem, have you sold unto the Grecians? So we know historically the Israelites were sold by the Canaanites, right? Which you see when it talks about O.F.I and Zidon, to the Grecians. We were sold that ye may remove them far from their border. And what did they do? They took us into captivity out of the land of Israel and things of that nature. Slave trade. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them. The Most High is going to raise us up out of all of our captivity and return your recompense upon your own head. He's going to repay them for what they've done. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for the Lord Yahweh have spoken of it. This is the recompense. We're going to take them into captivity, and we're going to own them as servants and handmaids like they own us. But the difference is we're not going to be raping them. We're not going to be hanging them from a tree. We're not going to be castrating their Gentiles. We're not going to be feeding their children to alligators. Literally in the law, it states that we can't do those things, right? Let me get this real quick. In the law, right? 1 second. Because when you think of slavery, I'm going to show you something. Even in Deuteronomy, right? 23 and 15. Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which is escaped from his master unto thee. So we have certain laws, all right? That's why it says, cursed is him who hanged on a tree. We have certain laws that even govern slavery, right? And servitude and how you can treat your property, all right? So that's not like, and this is the mighty precept that the officer brought out, Daniel 7 and 27 in the GNT. The power and greatness of all the kingdoms, the water king for this mighty precept, on earth will be given to the people of the supreme God, Yahweh. Who's the people of the supreme God? The Israelites. Their royal power will never end, and all rulers on earth will serve and obey them, the children of Israel. Why do you think it talks about, Christ says some of us will have rulership over 10 cities, right? I'm going to get that real quick in the book of Luke. In the book of Luke, chapter 19 and verse 17, it says, and he said unto him, well, thou good servant, because thou hast been faithful in a very little, have thou authority over 10 cities. So this is showing even in the kingdom, there's going to be rulership with the children of Israel over, the other nations, and we'll have governing bodies through the children of Israel over various cities. Now, getting back to the point, Revelations 21, 23 through 24, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. All right, which the brother just brought out that mighty precept. Officer brought that out, showing in Daniel how that and what that looks like in terms of, the other nations in that Daniel 7 chapter bringing their forces to us. Revelations 22 and 2. In the midst of the street of it, being Jerusalem, and on either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruit, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the trees were for the healings of the nations. Now, this is parabolic. You got the 12 nations, the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, and the leaves, the doctrine, the righteousness, right? The law that's coming from the Most High God through Christ and his government, 144,000, the 12 elders, through the children of Israel, of bringing righteousness back to the earth, which is going to heal the nations. Heal the nations from what? From the idolatry, right? From all of the grapes, the robbery, the murdering, all of the heathendom, okay, that's being perpetuated right now through Esau and the other nations. All right. The nations enter the city, but through the gates named after Israel. All right. So you got to think there's going to be like there will be other nations in the city, but they won't be in the ruling class because they'll be subservient. Like, Lord willing, if I'm a part of that number, I'll have other nations who are heathen servants, but I won't treat them how they treated our people, rape, robbery, and murder. You follow what I'm saying? There's an order to how you operate in righteousness, in righteous rulership. Okay. They walk in the light of the cities whose glory is the Israelites. The leaves of the tree heal the nations because Israel is a tree they are grafted into. Not grafted into in the sense of, I want to be careful when I explain this. They're not grafted into Israel in the sense of now they become Israelites. In this context, I mean, they're grafted into the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding under the rulership, the laws, the statutes, the commandments. But they're not grafted into Israel to make them a part of the nation of Israel. In proper context, when we go into Romans and when we go into the grafting in of the Gentiles in that context, it's talking about Israelites who lost their heritage and custom and were living like heathens, and they're grafted into. So this language is very dangerous if I'm not explaining it in its proper context. This is talking about Israelites and the other nations grafting into as far as adopting our cultures and being under our rulership and up under our law, statutes, and commandments. All right. The nations are present, but they are guests in the Israelite kingdom. That's a perfect thing to say. So moving on, when we talk about in terms of the nations have to keep the feast. So the nations will also be there, but they will have to be subjected to our laws, our statutes, and commandments. And the book of Zechariah, the 14th chapter, displays this. Zechariah 14, 16 through 19. And it shall come to pass, this is future prophecy, that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the king. So we see where the nations are going to have to come up year to year, and they're going to have to worship the king, Yahushua, at Jerusalem, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And it shall be that who will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the king, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. And if there's no rain, there's going to be judgment, there's going to be famine, and there's going to be death. And if the family of Egypt go not up, there's a specific judgment too for the families of Egypt. We know that was our first captivity. And come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. This shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So it's clear all of these nations are going to have to be subservient to our king, Yahushua, underneath our rulership through the children of Israel, right? The government. And if they don't keep the law and do these certain things, they will be judged, right? Which also shows you that this is a cut on the new covenant, that the new covenant, when we go into Isaiah 31 and 31, I mean, it's like Jeremiah 31 and 31, Hebrews 8 and 8, and so forth and so on, that it says in those days will the Most High God make a new covenant with the children of Israel in the house of Judah, right? So it's showing the context who that new covenant is for, and he puts their laws, his laws, Salakia, pardon me, into our internal parts, which is into our mind, right? And that we can't break the law anymore. So this is how you know that context of even the new covenant is not for the heathen nations, because it shows right here in Zechariah the 14th chapter that if the heathens, this is in kingdom connotation and context, right? This is a kingdom prophecy. If these heathens had the laws in their inward part, it would be impossible for them to sin. And it's clearly showing they can sin by not keeping the law, but the children of Israel who are in that new covenant, they won't be able to sin because the laws will be written into our inward parts. That's a clear cut. All right. So the nations in the kingdom that do not worship however they please, they keep the Feast of Tabernacles, right? A commandment of Israelite feast year after year. The very feast mainstream Christianity calls abolished. How don't you have to keep the Feast of Tabernacles now, but you have to keep it in the kingdom. That doesn't make any sense, right? You have to keep it now is what I'm saying as well. Are the exact feasts every surviving nation will be required to keep in the Messiah's kingdom, in Yahushai's kingdom. This is plain upon table, all right? Israel's rule, the nation serves. Psalms 2 and 7 through 9. I will declare the decree. Yahweh hath said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, non-Israelites, right? And the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. If you keep the law, statutes, and commandments as an Israelite, and you are part of that number. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, and thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. We're going to beat the other nations into submission, because remember, they're going to come up against Yahushai at Jerusalem. All right. All of the nations are going to battle. That's why in Zechariah, it says that every one that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up. So there's going to be a battle of Armageddon, right? And all those nations, the Most High through Yahushai and the angels and the armies and the children of Israel are going to beat the other nations into submission. They're not just going to willingly serve Yahushai. They're going to fight him. All right. Revelations 2 and 26. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, tying to Psalms, the 2nd chapter. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I receive of my Father. So just how Yahushai has that power to rule the nations, given by Yahweh, his Father, he's going to extend that power to his ruling government, which are the children of Israel, which are going to break the other nations into subjection through the laws, the statutes, the commandments. And there's never going to be another kingdom on the earth. There will be no kingdom of America ruling. You know, people get the 1,000-year reign twisted. They think, you think that Christ is going to only come and rule for 1,000 years, and then what? The other nations are going to rise back up and beat him? Like, think about the context, what that 1,000-year reign means and what it can't mean. It can't mean that the kingdom is only going to last for 1,000 years, and then what, the other nations rise up again, and then what? Christ has to fight them again? And that doesn't make any sense, right? Okay. Reading to Isaiah 60 and 10 through 12. And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls. Who are these sons of stranger? Ben Nakar, the sons of the heathen, shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. This goes back to that Daniel 7 and 27, right? And this goes back to Revelations 21, where they're bringing their forces. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces, which is the riches of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought up. For the nations and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. You see that? And we even see that in Zechariah the 14th chapter, that if they don't want to serve thee. And notice, this doesn't just say serve Yahweh. This says serve thee, because Yahweh, then you have Yahushai, then you have the 12 apostles or elders, 144,000, who's the top ruling governing body. Then you have the children of Israel, all 12 tribes, who are the extension of the ruling government. So the nations and the kingdom that will not serve thee, being the children of Israel, shall perish. Yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Isaiah 61, 5 through 6. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks. All right, servitude. And the sons of the alien shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers. But ye shall be named the priests of Yahweh. Men shall call you the ministers of our God. Ye shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in their glory shall ye boast yourselves. Why will we boast ourselves? Because the Most High God, we're not boasting ourselves in humility. We're boasting ourselves because this is what the Most High God has promised us. We're excited about the promises that we will be back in rulership, right? We won't be under the subjection of the other nations like we are right now, scattered to the four corners. And notice when you go back into this Revelations 26, it says, And he shall rule them with the rod of iron, as the vessels of potters shall be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. Now peep this. And he that overcometh. So this is connotation of, in the end, the Israelites who overcome and keep my works unto the end, which means my works, you got to be doing the commandments unto the end. This is the cut that you don't have to keep the commandments now, because what are those works? Those works are following God's laws, right? To him will I give power over the nations. Now, this is a cut because if you think that all the nations are already in rulership in the kingdom of heaven, if there's the multi-ethnic church is now grafted in to be Israelites and everybody is spiritual Israel, then who are these nations that are getting ruled over with? Because certainly if you ask someone, if you say, well, look, in the kingdom, will all of the people who sinned and not make the kingdom, where will they be? And most people are going to say all of the non-believers who didn't make the kingdom are going to be in hell. Or some people may say going to be in the lake of fire. I'm just using mainstream Christianity understanding. So then if that's the case, and if that's your understanding, and all of the non-believers aren't in the kingdom of heaven, then who are these nations being ruled over in the kingdom of heaven? And they're going to be stumped. They can't answer this question because their doctrine is not biblical. It doesn't align with the biblical truth. All right. It says that comes around and is going to be perfect. Not sure what the sister means by that. People fail to realize that Abba hates liars. Lies can't last forever. Oh, yeah. And that's why it says in the scriptures that they have the Gentiles are going to say, the heathen's going to say, hey, we have inherited lies and things of which there is no profit. All right. Moving on. Isaiah 61, 5-6. And that's why ye shall eat the riches of the Gentiles. Amos 9-11-12. In that day will I raise up the tabernacles of David that is fallen. We got to understand rulership came through David, through the loins of David. That's how you have our Messiah. That's how we have our Messiah, Yahushua. He's going to raise back up the tabernacles of David, right? That's the southern kingdom and the house of Judah being that rulership, and close up the breaches thereof. When you think about this, goes back to Ezekiel, the 37th chapter. He's going to make that 2 sticks, 1 stick in the hand. He's going to close up that middle wall of partition, the breaches thereof. And I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. There's going to be, you got to think David had a unified, united kingdom. So he's going to, Yahushua is going to unite the whole, all 12 tribes, that they may possess the remnant of Edom, because there's going to be a remnant of Edom that's left, and all of the heathen which are called by my name, right? Saith the Lord that doeth this. Now people get this twisted and say, well, he says the heathen which are called by his name. So the heathen are talking about the Israelites. No, in this context, because the heathen are the property of Yahweh, right? The heathen. This doesn't mean that they're now become Israelites, because remember in Psalms, the 2nd chapter, he said, we're going to possess the heathen. So that's what this context is going into, of us possessing the heathen being subservient to the children of Israel and to Yahweh. So read every verse together that we just put up. The nations that will not serve Israel shall perish. The strangers who submit will build the walls, feed the flocks, and be the plowmen. Israel will be the priest of Yahweh, a nation of kings and priests over the restored earth. This is the kingdom the apostles preach. This is what our beloved brother Paul was talking about, right? This is the kingdom mainstream Christianity has forgotten through supersessionism, all right? Replacement theology. The whole matter. The nations are present in the kingdom. Remember that. There will be other nations in the kingdom, but in their proper position, serving the king, Yahushua, right? Serving the ultimate king, Yahweh, through the throne king, Yahushua, and his Israelite saints who overcome. This is why children of Israel, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans of indigenous descent on the Western Hemisphere, and all of our brothers on the Eastern Hemisphere throughout the 4 corners of the world, right? Our brothers and sisters, This is why we have to repent and keep the commandments so that we can be a part of the rulership in the kingdom and be able to serve Christ, serve the Most High God through Christ and through the kingdom rulership. All right. Yes, ruling over the other nations is a part of it, but that's not our main focus. Our main focus is making the kingdom. And a part and parcel of that is having rulership. Okay. Being heir, being a part of that royal bloodline. Okay. Because even if you think about Saudi Arabia right now, right? I want to get this real quick as an example, right? How many princes currently in the house of Saud? So right now, the house of Saud, which is the Saudi Arabian royal family, has an estimate total of 15,000 members, with roughly 2,000 princes holding the majority of the power, wealth, and influence. So think about that. And look, lineage growth, sprawling descendants multiply rapidly through generations and historical practices of polygamy tracing back centuries, right? So listen, the House of Saud, which is the ruling members of Saudi Arabia, there's 2,000 active princes. There's 15,000 holding royal status, princes and princesses. So think about how much more this will be for the children of Israel. Like, it's not far-fetched to understand that the Most High God has a ruling class. That ruling class is, there's going to be princes and princesses, right, of the children of Israel that will rule and govern the earth underneath the king, Yahushua. No difference than you see nowadays, right, in other nations and societies, okay? So there are 12 gates, not 13. There's not a gate for the Gentiles, right? There's no gate marked Gentiles. From Matthews 15 and 24 to Revelations 21:12, the story is one story. The gospel is the regathering, restoration, and coronation, which means the crowning of the children of Israel. That's why Yahushua said he's going to place crowns on our heads and give us white robes, Lord willing. We're in that number, with the surviving nations grafted in as servants and worshipers under the Messiah's rod of iron. Okay? So with that, all praise to the Most High, Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Lord willing, this was edifying to the 12 tribes that scattered abroad. Greetings, like, comment, subscribe to the 12 tribes of Israel. I'm Brother Nakamaya, right? Malak Noir. Check in the righteous music that's coming out as well. Kwam Yashab. Shalom.